Vibe coding helped me make the L&D dashboard of my dreams. I built this application in 10 hours with roughly $50 inside Lovable. No engineering team required. One of the hardest and yet most important tasks in L&D is tying our work back to business performance. To do this, we're often dependent on the data and dashboards of other departments. First, we need to keep an accurate log of when learning solutions are made available to the workforce. Then we have to compare those records to business performance and target metrics, if we're lucky enough to have access to them. And that's not unreasonable. In fact, it's the same thing that a lot of other departments do. However, the task becomes more daunting when you realize that you're building and deploying resources for almost every department in the business, sometimes simultaneously, which means you likely need to track and monitor more metrics than almost anyone else. To make things worse, there's often no budget allocated to L&D for data analysts and BI developers to help build those dashboards and reports. So you end up asking your instructional designers and trainers to track this information instead of doing what they do best, building and developing great learning solutions. Despite these challenges, the best leaders I know find a way to make it happen, even if that means sorting through all the data themselves and performing a manual calculation to uncover a mostly accurate ROI. But what if things could be easier? What if you could build your own bespoke dashboard to log L&D contributions in all their variety, effortlessly tie those contributions to business metrics, visually demonstrate the impact on performance, and make it easy for your team to get credit for the often invisible work they do? That's exactly what I was trying to do by building this L&D performance application in Lovable. I wanted to build a dashboard that could solve a lot of these problems. This is my first draft, and it still has room for improvement, but I'm really excited to show you what it can do. The thing I'm the most excited about is the way the dashboard automatically correlates your work to business metrics, making the part that used to be the hardest, the most effortless. Here's how it works. You track what you and your team are doing to improve business performance using some preset categories. In this example, I'm using short-term actions, long-term actions, and training events. You tell the application which business metrics you're trying to improve, and the application automatically connects your efforts to business performance over time. Those efforts show up on your dashboard as dots on a performance line with hover states that pull up a description of what your team did. Here's a quick example. Let's say one of the performance metrics you're trying to improve is average contract value per customer, meaning that your business wants sales agents to negotiate favorable prices for goods and services instead of dropping prices to acquire customers. There are a lot of learning solutions that could help with that. You might do some short-term things, like scheduling time for reps to shadow high performers or having one-on-one coaching sessions with a mentor or trainer. And you might do some long-term things, like build a course to teach price negotiation strategies, or even host formal events like live workshops led by experts. When those activities are marked as complete, they're stored in the Records tab and then automatically correlated with business performance in real time on the Dashboard tab. If you jump to the dashboard, each of your performance metrics is represented as a line chart, so you can easily see how the business is performing in that area over time. The actions we just recorded show up as dots on those performance lines based on the dates that were recorded. If you hover over those dots, you can see a description of the action or event that was logged and visually see how performance was doing before and after. I've also color-coded the dots to represent different things. In this example, blue dots represent training events recorded on the training calendar tab, and the orange dots represent everything else. As a side note, I know that there's some data that we all work with, like completion reports or compliance reports from an LMS, that can't easily be tracked over time, because when you export those reports, they just show you a snapshot of where you are today. In other words, they don't show historical data, and you don't run reports every day, which means a line chart might not be the best way to display performance. Now, we still need to be able to connect all the work that's been done for these snapshot metrics, even though they can't be represented as dots on a performance line. So I added an option on these charts called View Associated Actions that displays a list of all the tasks and events that were done to help improve those metrics. I also taught these charts to understand completion reports from an LMS, so they can automatically count and categorize training statuses to output a percentage. All you have to do is tell it which column to count. All right, there's one last cool thing I want to show you. I built the dashboard to track a variety of metric types across multiple locations. And there are some other typical L&D things that matter to us and the business, but I'm just going to skim over those and jump straight to the business metrics because I think that's more interesting. I designed the dashboard to have 3 types of metrics. 4 if you count location-specific metrics. Those metrics are ongoing metrics, things that L&D is always responsible for tracking and monitoring. Completion metrics for things like compliance courses and employee certifications, and seasonal metrics for project-specific metrics that L&D won't always track but are directly tied to current business priorities. For example, let's say you're working on a project to improve the NPS score for customer service. The L&D team won't track that all year long, but we do want to know if our learning solutions have had a positive impact on performance during that season. Any Any of these metrics can be set as location-specific metrics, and all 4 of those metric types show up on the dashboard, along with some other key bits of information like number of current projects and new hire training status. Metrics can be viewed over any time period you want, and filtered by location or added together and averaged by viewing all locations at once. The crazy thing to me is that if I went the traditional route to build this dashboard, it would have cost me thousands of dollars, taken months to create, and if memory serves, the final dashboard still wouldn't be what I wanted. But with vibe coding, the feature changes and work happens so quickly that I can have an idea, test it, and refine it in minutes. Now you might be thinking, this is cool, Tom, but how hard would it be for me to build something like this? It's easier than you think. Prompt engineering matters a lot here because the program will only build what you tell it to, but you don't have to write the prompts on your own. You can use AI to do the heavy lifting. For each feature I added or bug I resolved, I would describe what I want to Gemini, have it generate a prompt in a way that Lovable would understand, and then refine that prompt by providing feedback before using it. It's a lot like managing a freelancer. In the end, this project took me about 10 hours, cost $50, and used up 200 Lovable credits. And the best part is, when I want to improve something and add a feature, I just pop back into Lovable, add that feature, and test it before publishing. I even added a bug reports button so users can easily tell me things they want me to improve. And I'm not trying to convince you that this is how you should track performance. I just want you to see how AI, especially vibe coding, can solve some of your biggest problems and make things that used to seem impossible easy. Any guesses how much this application would have cost if I hired a team of developers to build it? I don't know the answer either. I'm just curious what you think.